Warning, this episode contains brain food that will lead to improved emotional and social intelligence. Hello and welcome to our new short format servings of consciously prepared brain food designed to improve your mental fitness. This is Lisa Cypers-Kamen, your host. For more than 12 years, we've been proudly and consistently crafting harvesting happiness and sharing it with you. Each week, we spotlight diverse thinkers and doers who are contemporary trendsetters and change agents devoting their lives to creating a better world in which to live. We invite you to listen up and change the way you think about human happiness. Our award-winning content is fresh, optimistic, and purpose-driven media that promotes well-being from the inside out. Alrighty then, let's dive in. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for joining me on today's show, where we will explore minding the dash, forging a meaningful life. My guest today is Professor Dean Rickles. He is a professor of history and philosophy of modern physics at the University of Sydney and the co-director of the Centre for Time. Dean briefly trained as a concert pianist at the London College of Music. He is the author of many books, including Histories of String Theory and Quantum Gravity, and two recent books, one of which we're discussing today, Life is Short, an appropriately brief guide to making it more meaningful, as well as Dual Aspect of Monism and the Deep Structure of Meaning, which was co-authored with Harold Ottmanspacher. And I am so pleased, Dean, that you're in the house. It's bright and early in Sydney, Australia today, and I appreciate you starting your day with us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All
Good
right.
to be here.
Well, let's talk about the dash, about what we fill our time and our lives with.
Well, so one of the big themes of the book is precisely this idea of what we choose to spend our time on. And obviously, in the modern world, we are so full of distractions, and we're sort of taught to just be busy, busy, busy all the time, taught to work. We work until extremely old ages now, and they keep pushing up the retirement age. And so one of the themes of the book is it's kind of based on this older view of Seneca's, in this older book of the Stoic philosopher Seneca, who has this very famous also a very short book, as is mine, book called On the Shortness of Life. And that book is very much about the dash. In fact, its sole focus really is about this idea of buzzing through life, not really settling on anything, not really having time to enjoy it. And by the time you do think, okay, now I'm going to enjoy it, then it's too late to enjoy it. So he has sort of lots of nice examples about, how people say, I'm going to sort of just keep working now, and I'll do that thing that I want to do. I'll take that trip that I want to do when I'm 50 or in this, in the future. And they're always making ready for the future rather than actually living. So they never end up living at all.
Well, and it's almost like a conditional joy or conditional well-being. When I get rich, when I get thin, when I get this, when I get that, then I will give myself permission to have these things that I want. Yeah.
And the condition usually tends to focus on exactly wealth, making enough wealth to do the thing, rather than doing a smaller version of something now, which would still give you, plenty of joy. Yeah.
In your book, Life is Short, you talk about the wastage of time. And I do like that phrase. Give us some examples. I think I know where you're going with this, but go ahead.
Yeah. So we are extremely good in modern times, with the wastage of time. Part of the problem is there are just so many so many more ways of wasting time these days, so many more options. We think of options as a nice thing, but they sort of, many people have pointed this out in recent books, they lead to a kind of paralysis, an analysis paralysis, where you're trying to figure out which one to do. So you bounce around between various options, and you never really take any kind of option in very fully. The worst examples, I think, are internet-based and technology-based. I think this is sort of a pretty obvious thing. But there were early books that were pointing towards the kind of problems that we see now, such as Nicholas Carr's The Shallows was a good one. I don't know if you remember that book, where he's pointing out that we're sort of losing our ability to even attend to certain things fully and be immersed in experiences because we're constantly bouncing onto the next thing. Social media, you end up spending so much time just browsing through other people's lives or trying to figure out what you want to project out to the world about yourself, that you sort of stop focusing on making yourself a certain way. It's all about how you present yourself to be a certain way, and then your time is consumed with doing that rather than doing real things. It's all conducted at this virtual level. So I got rid of, writing this book, I got rid of all of my social media. I used to do Facebook a little bit, not really, and Twitter a little bit, and then got rid of both of those things. And there was a big improvement, actually, almost instantly.
Well, you have more space in your day to live your own life, to occupy your own life, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, and it's exactly, that's the correct word, is living your own life rather than trying to present something, or as teenagers do, especially. Teenagers are built to mimic and copy. It's sort of part of the way that they get on in the world. So they spend their time looking for the thing to be, and they will copy the various fashions. This has always been the way, but it's sort of just so much more accelerated these days, and it's so much more in their face because they're always on these platforms. And God knows what platforms exist now. They keep changing all the time. Facebook is for dinosaurs. Twitter is for dinosaurs. There's even faster versions of what you should be, and flashing these images and brief videos of here's the next thing that you need to focus on. Here's the next challenge that you have to do. So as you say, yeah, you can't really ever settle and just be yourself.
And it's interesting. I've been reading a lot about mimetic desire, and I think this is a little bit about what you're speaking, right? That we look to these external sources to model who we think we should become rather than being internally referenced and letting our own compass guide us there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, one of the problems is that the algorithms that these technology platforms use are precisely designed to do exactly that, to get inside your head so that you are mimicking it.
Yeah.
So they're trained to do this, and you'll be pulled in more and more. And what's really interesting is that you've probably heard of this new sort of controversy, furore, about Chat GPT, this new AI
Yes.
model where you sort of type in what some question, and it gives out these very human responses. But the way those models work, the way this technology works, is it doesn't know what it's going to be first until you sort of give it clues as to what it is meant to be. And it's almost as if we're turning the next generations into versions of artificial intelligences that have to be sort of programmed. It has to be programmed into them what they are going to be, what their sort of foundation is, and what their self is, without being told by looking outside and having this sort of mimetic training. They don't know what it is that they're supposed to be. And the fact that they're always on it means they never get a chance to figure that out independently.
It's interesting that you speak of this. I have 2 young adult children, and both of them really don't use social media. They've deleted a lot of their accounts. I mean, I have one that loves TikTok because it's like a complete distraction to her. But neither of them are big posters, and they say, I'm not interested in, living somebody else's life or putting mine on display. And I thought that was a very healthy response.
That's good. I mean, you would think, it should really be not trained. It should be sort of presented this way in schools, I would think. I imagine your kids are like this because they've got a mother that presents a podcast called Harvesting Happiness, which helps quite a lot. But
I don't know if they would cop to that, but I think you could be right.
Exactly. So, my older daughter is the same. She doesn't go on it much at all, but she does go on YouTube, and YouTube does this thing where YouTube is another really bad one for the wastage of time, which is what we started off talking about. Because again, it's the algorithm. It trains itself on what you are looking for, and then it will give you exactly the thing that you want, that it thinks you want. And it's a completely sort of statistical way it does it. It's not really, it doesn't know anything about you, but it's as if it knows exactly your deepest desires, and it feeds them to you.
it's not personal, but yet it is very personal. And it's actually turning us
Yeah.
collectively, into our data a form of capital, which is
Yeah.
really annoying.
Oh, that's exactly what it's doing. Exactly. Attention is the capital in the social media world. Keeping you on and plugged in is the capital. Exactly.
Well,
What a terrible thing.
yeah, and the data it feeds to product makers so they continue to create stuff to sell to us. So it's like this vicious cycle. So at that point, you say, I'm out, at least for me.
You should. I must say, I sometimes do. I still go on YouTube because there are amazing things on there, but you've got to be savvy about how that algorithm is working, and that nothing is free. You think you're going on to these things, and you think this is free of charge. This is fantastic. It's certainly not free. Nothing is free. We know this, and as you say, it's the data is being sold in order to keep you even more hooked into this scheme, basically.
I do have to say, as a funny aside, that I did learn how to descale my coffee maker, my very posh coffee maker, on a YouTube video because like it came with no instructions, the descaling solvent. So I was very
Yeah.
impressed that I could go there and there were 895 videos to teach me how to do it.
Yeah, what puzzles me, I know there's something for everything. Anything you could possibly think of on YouTube. I mean, who are these people that do the videos? I mean, it's great that they do them, but I can't really imagine putting a video on there to show how to descale a kettle. But I'm glad they are, they're on there.
It was, yeah, I was too. It was the product maker it's themselves that did it. So I knew I was at a good source anyway. That was legitimate. And in 3 minutes, I had figured it out. So I was very pleased. But those kinds of moments are few and far between. And that actually felt like a really good use of time.
Exactly. So this is the thing again. So it sounds like we're bashing technology itself.
And we're
And
not.
obviously these technologies have amazing possibilities, especially for education purposes, and they can be fun. And you find, what I like to do is find these old videos of old piano performances or something, or these kind of things, or really old physics lectures of my favorite physicists from the 1930s or something. And for that kind of thing, it's absolutely amazing. You wouldn't really get it anywhere else. And if you're selective and you dip into things like this, I can't see any problem with it. But it's when you sort of get pulled. It's almost like you're going to a trance. So I've done it myself with certain things. You get pulled into a trance and follow where it's pulling you, this data stream, by manipulating you and sort of reading what you want next. That's the thing to watch out for. And there should really be it should be part of education now to teach the kids how to not be pulled down these paths.
And I think understanding the way the brain operates is not something that is taught to any of us, right? Like if you end up being interested in psychology or psychiatry or even philosophy, you come to have a basic understanding about this, but the average person does not. And once you do understand, I think it's easier to learn how and when to say no.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, we know it's not hard either to explain how the reward system works and how the dopamine system works. Really young kids could understand it and they could see it in their own behavior, how it happens to them, and then be aware and be sort of, taught how to spot the signs when they're getting pulled by a dopamine hit.
Let's take a pause and come back and talk about the dopamine urge, because I think that's an important subject. And before we go to that break, I want to let everyone know that you may find Dean Rickles out there on the internet, in the ethers at Psychology Today, that he keeps a low digital footprint. But you can find him out there because he's got a blog and he's got books. So look for Dean Rickles at Psychology Today. Here comes the pause. We'll be right back. Before we head to the break, let me share one of my secrets for healthy hair and great hair days. Did you know that 30 million women in the United States are impacted by weakened or thinning hair? If you're among them, like me, you're not alone, and there is a solution that you can trust to deliver great results. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement that's clinically shown to improve hair growth, thickness, and visible scalp coverage. Nutrafol supports healthy hair growth from within by targeting the 5 root causes of hair thinning: stress, hormones, environment, and metabolism through whole body health. That's why I'm a huge fan of Nutrafol, because it goes beyond genetics to target the factors that impact hair growth. Now is the time to have lovelier locks and better well-being with Nutrafol. Start by visiting Nutrafol.com to take the hair wellness quiz for customized product recommendations. Did you also know that thinning is different for men and women? Nutrafol has multiple unique formulas that provide exactly what we need based on our biology and age. Each physician-formulated product uses natural, drug-free, medical-grade ingredients in consistent doses for reliable results that I have experienced firsthand. In a clinical study, 86% of women saw improved growth after 6 months of use. More than 3,000 top doctors and stylists recommend Nutrafol as an effective and high-quality solution for healthier hair. What I love most about Nutrafol is that in addition to beautiful hair, the ingredients have helped me improve my sleep, stress response, skin, and nails. Who wouldn't want that? A big shout out of thanks to Nutrafol for helping me grow fuller, healthier, and happier hair from the inside out over the past several months. Join me and millions of others who are celebrating great hair days with Nutrafol. You can grow thicker, healthier hair and support our show by going to Nutrafol.com and entering the promo code HAPPINESS to save $10 off your first month subscription. This offer is only available to U.S. customers for a limited time, plus free shipping on every order. Get $10 off at Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code HAPPINESS. Now let's take that break. We'll be right back. Each day we have the intellectual freedom to be happy or the liberty to be miserable, regardless of external circumstance. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, urge them to seek professional support, because good psychological health is vital in achieving a satisfying life. Visit harvestinghappiness.com for psychosocial educational resources to boost emotional and social intelligence. Like what you hear on Harvesting Happiness? Sharing is caring. Pay it forward by spreading the word to your tribe through social media. Find us at Harvesting Happiness on Facebook and me at Lisa Kamen on Twitter. And we're back. But before we return to the conversation, I want to shout out how I'm obsessed with Skims' Fits Everybody underwear collection. And I must say that all the hype is 500% true. This underwear is so stretchy, soft, comfortable, and non-binding. It feels like it just melts on my body. In fact, I forget I'm even wearing it. Skims is the solution-oriented brand creating the next generation of underwear, loungewear, and shapewear for everybody. Right now, I'm wearing the Fits Everybody dipped front thong, and I have to say, I'm a convert. No visible panty lines, no annoying binding edges, just pure, flattering comfort and joy. I'm in love with Skims and never going back to ordinary undergarments. The Fits Everybody collection of underwear are lightweight, form-fitting essentials. The buttery soft fabric molds to your body and stretches to twice its size. It's offered in a range of cuts and fits, from underwear and bras to dresses, t-shirts, and bodysuits. Available in sizes extra, extra small to 4X and offered in 9 core colorways and limited edition seasonal colors. Believe the hype. This collection has over 90,000 5-star reviews for a reason. Skims Fits Everybody and more best-selling essentials are available now at skims.com. Plus, get free shipping on orders over $75, all at skims.com. Now let's get back to it. And we're back, continuing the conversation with my guest today, Dean Rickles. Let's get back to it. So, Dean, let's get back to dopamine. You know, this seems to be the chemical that every human being and probably animal lusts after, even if we don't know what it is.
Yeah, I mean, there are sort of famous animal experiments, since you mentioned animals, where even rats can be trained to almost trigger their dopamine response to the point of death.
Yeah. To
get this sort of little reward system. They will keep going to this machine, pressing this little button that gives them this dopamine spike that makes them feel good. And they would do it until they die. That you can make rats into drug addicts, essentially, very, very quickly. obviously that's what's going on in all of the addictions we have. So I don't really mention this in the book, but it connects very strongly to this to one of the ideas in the book, which is the Jungian notion of individuation. So I spend quite a lot of time in the book talking about individuation, and that really is a way of getting this reward system and this, the fact that we keep wanting to do certain behaviors because of the reward we get, trying to get that under control. And it's strongly connected to the ego, because it's the ego that's going through trying to get these responses to make itself feel good, to make itself bigger and stronger and all of these kinds of things. And the reason why I like this, the Jungian approach, which fell out of favor for decades, I think it's coming back in fashion again now, I hope, is that you get this ego under check and the dopamine system under check by stepping back away from the ego and watching what exactly it is that's pushing it around, right? So we tend to think that we're in charge and we're making the decisions and we're deciding what we do and what things we take. Individuation is the procedure of stepping back and seeing that really that ego is like Jung puts it as a cork being bobbed around in an ocean. Right? We're really not in control most of the time. And individuation is the idea that you step back out of it and see what it is that's pushing that cork around. Why is it that you need a particular kind of response? And usually there's some kind of complex or some kind of trauma that led to you feeling the need to keep going back to these sort of addictive behaviors in the first place.
You mentioned the rat experiments, and I'm thinking of the rat park experiments, right? Where there were two sets of rats, I believe it was. The one set of rat that had access to the cocaine or heroin laced water, but lived in community with all these other rats, and how very few of them would go and occasionally take a little sip of that water. But when they were living in community with all the toys and being able to procreate and have fun and party with one another, none of them actually became addicted because they had the secret sauce of social connection.
Wow. Yeah. I actually don't know those experiments. They sound very good and they make perfect sense from the point of view of what I've just said, of course, to do with the trauma and neglect. Obviously, what's happening is the dopamine is giving you the thing that you should be getting, as you say, from other connections and from other sources. Yeah. I mean, I noticed somebody mentioned something about my book the other day, which hit home a bit, which is that it doesn't really mention these sources of connection and getting meaning from connection. And it's absolutely right. And I mean, if I'd have written that book again, I probably would have mentioned that these are extremely strong sources of meaning. And what all my book was doing was showing how death provides one big source of meaning. But obviously this community connection is a huge source of meaning as well. There's not just one source of meaning for your life. Often we speak of the meaning of life as if there's just one answer to that. But obviously there are all sorts of possibilities that provide life with a meaning. And this connection is a big one.
But to go back to the looking at life or experiencing life with the end in mind, it is a universal experience, right? I mean, it's one that we will all go through at some point or another. And by having that understanding that at some point our lives as we know it will cease to exist, for somebody who is at least a little bit contemplative will say, well, maybe I should pay attention to how I choose to live now.
Well, we started speaking about distraction and the dash. I think a lot of the source of that is a sort of, there's this thing called terror management theory by this guy Sheldon, I forget his surname. He has this really nice book called The Worm at the Core. And the idea is that death and the specter of death is the worm at the core of our life. And often what we're doing when we're doing this dash and distracting ourselves is distracting ourselves from that worm at the core, and we're engaging in terror management theory. We're trying to avoid the terror of the fact that we will not exist at some point. So I think a lot of the distractions are sort of pushing us away from that. So a lot of people don't think very much about death. And one of the other themes in the book is this personality profile, the puer eternus or Peter Pan syndrome, profile, which exists in such a way that it sort of feels like it's not going to die. It feels unlimited by things like death and other limits, in fact. And then it misses out on meaning because it doesn't have that limit and it doesn't feel limited. It's never having to commit to particular paths. So there's sort of a bunch of interesting entanglements with these concepts.
Indeed. Indeed. And I think what we're talking about is not morose. I think, there's a very interesting university project. Oh, God, I forget which university. I'm sure it's been done at several, where the students were asked to write their own obituaries. And I thought that was a very powerful exercise that forces one to look at how we want to be seen, how we want to be experienced, and how we want to be remembered.
Yeah. There's that's a nice study, and I suppose it would force you to put what you would like your obituary to be. Yeah. So that's kind of forcing you to think a bit more. And this is the point of the book. Death is sort of this flashing sign that narrows your focus, so that you can construct carve basically a meaningful life. So that at the end you're happy with what you've done. And there was another study. There was this famous Harvard longevity study where they asked people at the end of their lives who were, very close to death, what were the most meaningful things and what their advice would be. And it actually tended to focus on what you said earlier, which is the connections, the social connections. Nobody really regretted not making more money. Nobody regretted not making more money. Never cropped up anywhere. What they regretted was loss of social connections that could have happened, that they could have been doing.
Yeah, and I think the loss of opportunity, right? Like things that they didn't do that they would have liked to have done.
Yeah, but what's interesting is those things that they didn't do were never sort of consumerist or they didn't get the Ferrari that they always wanted or something like that. So but this sort of highlights the point of the book, which is that if you didn't have that limit there, if you didn't face death, you wouldn't have these realizations. It wouldn't force you to choose. So it's a philosophy book, and the argument is that limit of death forces. So you view your future as a series of possible paths, possibilities, none of which are real yet. They're sort of virtual reality. If you didn't have that limit of death, you would never be forced or pressured. There'd be no urgency to choose a particular one. But it's only in choosing a particular one that you say who you are, that you're determining and defining what makes you you, and having experiences that build your past that also make you you. So there's huge meaning in just making these decisions, because in each of these decisions, what you're doing is sacrificing other possibilities. And it's sort of in those sacrifices that I think that you're gaining a whole extra load of meaning in your life.
I agree with you. And it brings me to the point of your book, Life is Short, of philosophy being really the ultimate self-help tool, right? To ask these provocative, open-ended questions of ourselves and others to ponder.
Yeah, I mean, it always was this way. It's only recently that philosophy's become this sort of, I don't know what the word is, this ivory tower discipline. It was usually presented until quite recently as a tool, basically, a way of life, and especially a way of learning how to die. One of the definitions of philosophy, I think it was Montaigne's definition, was philosophy is a way of learning how to die. And it's sort of getting ready and making ready for the inevitability of it. So that it's almost like a form of Buddhism in a different way, a more sort of intellectual version of Buddhism.
That came to my mind as you were speaking, and not the notion of a soul or a singular death, but the willingness to go through multiple cycles of birth, death, and renewal in one's own lifetime as well. It's not, not the ultimate exit. There are multiple opportunities.
Exactly. So, I mean, this is the idea of learning how to die before you die. Yeah. And seeing that you carry on, and seeing that when you do that, this is how new things happen, how creative things happen. It has to be born from the end of the old and chaos and nothingness. I mean, one of Plato has this idea that philosophers, because they are supposed to be dealing with these sort of abstract forms that not quite reality, but something beyond reality, they are making themselves already used to the idea of beyond life states and what the thing that's beyond death. Obviously, Plato believed in all sorts of things like the transmigration of souls and whatnot. So he viewed it as preparing for that, for being ready for this non-spatio-temporal kind of existence that happens afterwards. We certainly lost a lot of these kind of ideas in philosophy, which is a shame because it's just a great tool for getting your head around existence and purpose and meaning. I don't know why this isn't taught in schools either. It puzzles me.
Well, it was 100 years ago. It's just not
exactly.
I mean, when I was coming up 100 years ago, it was.
Yeah.
Well, this conversation is the kind of brain food that I love to explore on this show because it's provocative, right? You know, I hope our listeners take this home to their own dinner tables tonight because it's a big topic, you know, having the opportunity to choose how we show up. We might not be able to control a lot, like you say, right? Or like Jung talks about being the cork in the ocean, but we can choose how we show up for life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's where the meaning, in my view, that's where the meaning is. I mean, not only that, another thing that the book ends with is the fact that when you're making these choices, you're not only making choices for yourself, you're also taking responsibility for what happens to the universe, or at least the little bit of the universe around you that you influence. So you're sort of carving yourself and you're carving the world around you. And one of the reasons people don't like to do that and don't like to make decisions is because you have to take responsibility when you make a decision and you act on that decision. And people don't like to make decisions anymore, it seems. But that's the mark of an adult. The mark of an adult is to make choices that matter and then take responsibility for them. So there's, with this sort of social media craze and the distractions, we seem to becoming perpetual children, basically.
Which, might have its virtue now and again, actually.
yeah, it energizes. It's quite good to be childish, sometimes. It gives you, a good view on life. But to sort of live your life entirely in this childish manner and not choosing and not taking responsibility is probably not so good. I mean, I sort of prefer to talk, in the book, I sort of talk about the balance between a pair of poles. You don't want to be too boring and stagnate and go too far towards the senex, which is this old man energy. But you don't want to go too far towards the puer aeternus, because that's it's sort of puerile and childish. You want to be balancing and passing back and forth at the appropriate times between these two poles would be the sort of the wise way of living, I think.
The responsible human who's not afraid to go out and dance in the rain, Maybe somewhere like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're out of time. And I hope you'll come back and talk more about this with me because there's so much to explore here and so many ways to help people ask big questions, of themselves and the people that they love, because this is what makes for an interesting and meaningful world, to have conversations like this, at least for me, I'm in my happy place.
Yeah, I would be glad to. I like the name of this podcast, by the way. It's a very good title.
Oh,
it's very,
thanks.
Very nice.
Well, we do talk about the annoying yellow smiley face, and we're not talking about happyology here, right? We're talking about something really much deeper.
Yeah. No, but it has this idea of sowing to reap and reaping what you sow and figuring out how to do that.
Yeah.
It's very good.
And it's a process. It is a practice. That's what I have come to learn in this life for myself. But we're talking about you in your book, Life is Short, an appropriately brief guide to making it more meaningful. I urge our listeners to find Professor Dean Rickles on Psychology Today, because that's where he's hiding out in the ethers. No other digital footprint. And come back and hang out anytime. Seriously.
Yeah, that would be good. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us on Harvesting Happiness today. This is Lisa Cypers-Kamen on behalf of my guest, Dean Rickles, wishing you kind thoughts, kinder words, and the kindest of actions. Until next time, remember, happiness is an inside job. Happiness is your inside job. Please go out and rock your day, and remember to be kind to one another. Keep harvesting your own happiness anytime and anywhere from the comfort of wherever you are. Subscribe, listen, and share hundreds of downloadable episodes from our mental muscle toning libraries at harvestinghappinesstalkradio.com, toginet.com, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more about my global consulting services, please visit harvestinghappiness.com. Spread more joy by liking us on Facebook at Harvesting Happiness and following me on Twitter at Lisa Kamen. Harvesting Happiness is produced by me, Lisa Cypers-Kamen, Andrea Mengele, Robin Boyd, Andrea Daly, and the awesome team at Podfly Productions, including Eric Begay, Kimberly Beck, and Alec Gus, in collaboration with TogiNet Radio, KBUU, RadioMalibu.net, and is available on PRX, the Public Radio Exchange.